welcome to the Stellify podcast. I'm delighted. I've got Sol Luckman with me today. Sol is an award-winning international best-selling author whose work spans humour, fiction, non-fiction, and even lyrical expression. Sol is also a visionary painter, a long-time researcher of shamanism, inner alchemy, and the untapped potential of human consciousness. Sol is someone truly unafraid to question everything and to follow the trail wherever it leads, even into the farthest corners of our hidden history and multi-dimensional reality. Sol, I'm really looking forward to this. I really appreciate you coming on. I'm looking forward to some different perspectives on a lot of the subjects that I've been discussing with guests lately. And you've got a new book out, Get Out of Here Alive. And obviously, I knew it was akin, or a little bit of akin to No One Here Gets Out of Alive. And I had a bit of an obsession from about 17 years of age after watching the Doors movie. Jim Morrison became this demigod to me. He was the rock idol that just like, I was obsessed, maybe up until I was mid-20s even. Went to Paris and had to go and see his grave, as many did. And I believe you lived out there for a little while. Is that right?
Yeah. I even talk about going to his grave while I was living in Paris. Yeah, absolutely.
It
Those
was
were good
something
times.
else, really. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really wild back in the 90s. It was, I don't know what it's like these days, but because everything seems a little more sanitized, but it was an eternal party, let's put it that way.
Was it? Yeah. Was you getting a lot of pilgrimages kind of thing coming over to see Jim's grave?
Oh yeah, no doubt, no doubt. People would climb over the gate at night and go in, and every once in a while you would get run off, and people would just show back up again, or go. People would meet and go to bars or parties or whatever. From there were parties inside parties going on there.
So was the obviously the title of your book is inspired by that. Has Jim inspired your work as well?
Yeah, no doubt. I've got at least one painting of him. If you go over to my saulluckman.pixels.com and just look up Jim Morrison, you'll see something come up. Maybe it might be called Lizard King. I can't remember what I called it. But the same thing kind of happened to me. I saw Oliver Stone's movie when it came out in the very early 90s, and it made a really indelible impression on me, especially the first half of the movie. The second half, he comes off the rails, and it ends up quite a tragedy, of course. The first half was, I thought, just an amazing meditation on what it means to kind of step into your power as a poet, as an artist, as a visionary. Obviously there was the shamanic angle that was interesting to me at the time. I wasn't really on that particular path, so that became more meaningful as the years went by. I was more interested in him as a poet, as a lyric writer, as a performer, as a rock star, as someone breaking the rules. I was always a bit of a renegade in my heart, even when I was towing the line a little bit, to get along. But so I really wanted to emulate that in a lot of ways. And it's just funny how he's tracked through my life, in different ways, where I was in Paris going to his grave. And then that was a very meaningful place for me, asking questions about mortality when I was ill and sort of facing the possibility of dying. And, and then he's continued to be just kind of a strange inspiration to the present day, where I write Get Out of Here Alive in sort of homage in a way to his famous line, "No one here gets out alive."
Yeah 5-1 and all that.
Yeah. I mean, technically I think that's credited to the Doors as a team, but most people think he actually wrote that lyric. So
Wasn't there a line in the film as well where he said death would be an awfully big adventure or something on those lines? And death is something that is an unknown to so many of us, and it's something that I now I've reached 50 years of age. I'm still young, but you're pondering on what's coming. And obviously, you've been through a serious bout of health, haven't you, where you were thinking that maybe you were leaving. Did that take you on this journey then, in terms of reality itself?
Yeah, that was the real beginning for me, was getting sick back in the 90s during my 20s, when I was, supposedly in my prime, and I was laid low and had this crazy autoimmune condition going on, and no one could help me in the allopathic world. I was just diagnosed with depression. I was having all these
Really?
physical
Wow.
symptoms, right? Like, it's just insane.
Wow.
And I, I've often said I was depressed, but that was really a result of, this physical breakdown that I was having. So yeah, I'm not saying I wasn't depressed, but I wasn't classically depressed either. So like, really, that's not really my personality. I don't have a depressive personality. Never really have. So when I got on the holistic alternative medical path, then suddenly there's energy, there's uh, life force, subtle energy, chi, prana, all of these types of things. Then I'm doing like qigong and internal alchemy and all of these other disciplines, experimenting with transcendental meditation and all kinds of different things that just completely opened my eyes to a very different world. And that was the first of many rabbit holes that I traveled down in my search for I hesitate to use the word truth, because I have a problem with the notion of truth, but I was looking for truth for many years. Let's put it that way. I'm not really looking for truth anymore because I don't believe in it. But
Yeah.
um, so that was the Morrison, connection was just part of this path, and I would credit his presence and his image, his myth, to as something that really did inspire me to keep going, even in very dark times, and not give up, not give up the artistic journey of life, even when things didn't look so great.
It's incredible. I mean, I'm presuming, and I've obviously have listened to quite a bit of you over the past year, especially, and from my understanding, it was a medical intervention to travel that caused that initial, caused it all, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah,
Uh,
that was what I traced it all back to, and I had lots of other people tracing it back to that as well. Different holistic doctors and other people using other diagnostics and that kind of thing. I know this is a very controversial subject, but
yeah, yeah,
something I've had personal experience with in my own life and health, and then as a quote unquote healer, which is another word I don't really like, I have witnessed people having just a myriad of problems from the same type of thing. And so I'm not a proponent, let's put it that way.
yeah, yeah, and neither am I either. I mean, I wasn't anti it until they pushed it so hard in 2020, 2021.
Got Gotcha.
And then my kind of spider senses were well and truly up anyway. I was been going down rabbit holes, I think, as many do. And I want to get into this as well about the truth and movement as well, if you don't mind, Sol, because I know you brought this up a lot quite recently, and I think it's really important subject, about the loosh side of things. But this time at 2020, I presume, because of your experiences, you would have been quite forthright in trying to help people to avoid the pitfall that was coming. And were you condemned then as well?
Yeah, I had supporters and detractors for sure. It was a polarizing situation all the way around. I did write about my experience, and I wrote about my intergenetic modality for healing, Regenetics, from the perspective of here's something you can do, you know, in if you have to get this done, or if you had it done and you want to try to shore up your health and your energy, this is what worked for me. It, you know,
Yeah.
really brought me back from the brink of autoimmune death, essentially, and restored my health miraculously. And it's done this for so many people. I know that I'm not just an aberration here. This is something that quite normally happens with people who experience this work. So here's something you can do. So I wrote an article or two about that and just put it out there just as a public service announcement, and then went on with my life.
Yeah. And the regenetics then, if you don't mind, for people that don't know, I believe it's something to do with the vowels. Is that correct? And the sound, or could you explain a little bit for me?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a kind of complex subject that has its own history, but in a nutshell, it's a kind of sound healing technique. It's got some relationship to shamanism and to very old alchemical techniques having to do with something that's sometimes called the green language, or the language of the birds, which were vowel-based languages for healing and creation. So
Hmm.
the idea is that you can speak to your DNA using vowels, connecting to the nucleotide structure of your DNA and RNA. So the building block aspects of DNA, and you can tell it to go over into your aura or your biofield, your bioenergy blueprint, whatever you want to call it, and heal distortions and correct things that might have gone wrong, because it's really the
Wow.
blueprint that sustains your physical patterning. So not just physical, but physical, mental, spiritual, emotional patterning. So if you have a glitch over there in your blueprint, you can correct it using the power of intention and language and sound.
Wow.
And then
That's
that
incredible.
that 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 then flows back through in intergenetically into your genetic structure, and you begin experiencing what might be perceived as epigenetic changes. Some genes may turn on, some may turn off. You had an allergy to this, suddenly it's gone. How did that happen? Well, there was some kind of epigenetic change that happened in your response to your environment. But the difference between this technique and epigenetics is that you don't necessarily have to have a certain kind of mindset, or practice affirmations, or really, really believe in it for it to actually have an effect.
Was that practice something that really helped you at that point then? Was that the practice really that saved you?
That was the thing that I did, and I wouldn't call it a practice, because it's actually a one-time event. It's a 30-minute session that
Wow.
you do, and then it rolls. There are 4 total activations, but the first foundational activation, which is called potentiation, and you can learn to do it yourself. I wrote a book called Potentiate Your DNA. That's a 30-minute session, and then its effects go on for 42 weeks. They actually go beyond that in terms of how you can continue to heal and strengthen. But the timeline for the activation, in terms of how the energy moves through your biofield, which you can
Hmm.
track, you can actually track this, and I teach people how to track it. That's a 42-week process, which is a
Okay.
gestation cycle. It's a birth cycle, so it's kind of like an energetic rebirth cycle.
Okay. So do you offer this as a service then on a
Yes,
website or
yes,
something?
yes. If you go to phoenixregenetics.org, I mean, I've been doing it for 2 decades. It's been my primary
Ah, okay.
gig. And I've worked with people all over the world. So, Potentiate Your DNA is also available in Spanish, and we have a French translation that we haven't published yet, and
Okay.
I hope that we'll get around to that at some point. So,
When you were poorly, when you were very, very poorly, because you went, did you go to Peru or something like that? Was it that
Brazil.
you went Brazil?
Mhm.
Is that where you came across this Regenetics that over when you were over there, or did that come later?
Yeah, I was really sick. I had been studying allergy elimination technique. I had been doing tons of kinesiological muscle testing research on into different concepts having to do with DNA and sound and language, and different types of problems that one might have, conditions, diagnoses, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I had also had some people who stepped out of the woodwork as temporary teachers, people who had insights and things to provide that were really, really valuable. And Lee and I, my partner Lee and I, traveled to Brazil. Really, we were guided to do this, and I can't get into
Yeah.
all the minutia of how the breadcrumbs were laid down, but we ended up in Brazil. I thought maybe I was going there to die. I mean, I was not doing well at all. I said goodbye to family and friends as if maybe I was really saying goodbye. And we went down there and had a kind of mystical experience. And, I've talked about this on numerous podcasts, and I describe it in Potentiate Your DNA. And the upshot is that we actually downloaded or were given these vowel codes that we were instructed by our intuitive sense, our higher selves, our compassionate teachers, whatever you want to call these parts of our greater psyches that we were interacting with. We were given these codes and taught how to employ them. And there's a very
Oh,
specific methodology for doing that, where you are singing one set at a specific note, and then you're thinking another set of vowels at the same time. And sometimes the vowels might be different. Sometimes they might line up and be the same. But it's you can imagine that takes a little bit of practice to get to where you can comfortably do that. But as soon as we did it, Lee and I both began having extraordinary healing experiences, like miraculous. Like I went from being unable to eat basically anything except meat and vegetables with no seasoning,
okay. Right.
to within a matter of weeks, I was able to have pasta, which was bizarre. I mean, I was so riddled with candida. A lot of my condition, you think about somebody who's got some kind of mashup of chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia and some autoimmune environmental sensitivities, chemical sensitivities, electromagnetic sensitivities, just all kinds of crazy things, neurological issues, brain fog, all of that sort of thing. And so I really just couldn't eat because whatever I ate would just set me off. Had so much dysbiosis that it was just not something I could do. So I wasn't being really able to nourish myself particularly well. I mean, I did the best I could under the circumstances with
Yeah.
broth kind of thing. So it wasn't a complete disaster, but
Yeah.
so yeah, so it was amazing. And then I began detoxing a lot, and a lot of my symptoms just began to lessen and eventually went away.
I mean, it's like a miracle, that, isn't it? In a way, that you were meant to have that healing journey. So you were meant to get poorly, weren't you, to find this new this technique, if you like, whatever you class it as, to then take it to the world.
I guess I was, I mean, it seems like that in retrospect. I mean, I think we're always making choices, and we're playing it as it lays, putting one foot in front of the other, so I don't know about fate and destiny and all that kind of thing. Really, I have
Hmm.
lots of questions about it, but certainly that's how it played out, at least on this timeline.
Yeah, yeah. It's such an incredible and inspiring story, because I mean, we live in we seem to live in a quite a toxic environment, and a lot of people are getting sick. If this to get this out to people is so important, because in the Western, especially in the Western world, the pharmaceutical industry, they can't wait to just push you a pill. But if they can learn more about what the body's capable of, and what we are capable of, I just think it's wonderful. So that's incredible.
It's not everybody's cup of tea. You have to be open to, at least a little bit open to some alternative concepts, and
Mm,
uh, open to the idea that you're more than just a meat suit, that you actually have an energetic component that is important in some way.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Having said
yeah.
that, people, I mean, the work can be performed for young children who don't know what's going on. It can be performed for people with dementia, who don't know what's going on. So you don't necessarily have to understand all of that. But if you're
Okay.
the decision maker for yourself or someone else, it's helpful to at least be a little open to it. And people who aren't open to it, don't go there anyway, right? So they're shut down anyway, so that's fine. Really, it's the reason I think that there's such a kind of litmus test around this type of work is that it's also a kind of spiritual journey. As soon as you go down this path, you begin raising your energy levels, you begin changing your energy field, and you change as a person.
Yeah. I can imagine. And there's a big power in the intention as well. You mentioned intention earlier on. I remember I had a nervous breakdown in 2022 after we lost our businesses due to the madness. And the intention I made was so powerful that I was going to fix myself and then help others fix themselves, and so they don't have to go through what I was going through. But there's magic in that, I find. And I find this realm is magic. Whatever this place is, I think we are magic, and I think this realm is.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think there's just so many things one could say about that statement. The thing that comes to mind is just what I was doing this morning was just doing an alchemy, an inner alchemy exercise where all you do is just, you can close your eyes or leave them open if you want to, and you just follow your thoughts without censoring them. And you allow yourself to relax, and you just ride the current of your thoughts. And if you can learn to do this, it's almost like surfing in a way. And when you get good enough at this, where you know when to push, when to pull back, when to remember, when to forget, you can actually ride straight into a waking lucid dream.
Oh.
It's very, very interesting. And that's when you become super aware that every thought you're thinking is an act of magic. It's just some of them don't seem like it because you're stuck in your perception of who you are. You have a limited, reduced idea of what you really are.
And a lot of the programming we endure, especially as a kid, you're allowed to play, I suppose. Most of us are, and then the programming, the indoctrination, and then becoming an adult, you have to become an adult and have responsibilities. And if your imagination, it's just imagination, isn't it, to that program? But there is, I remember when I was doing my Reiki attunement, and things were coming into my head, and I thought I was going a bit crazy, to be honest with you, because it's, for me, it's like I've been taught this is just imagination, but it's not. There's more to it than that.
The funny thing, Ant, is that it is actually just imagination. And you know why? Because everything is just imagination.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
That's my conclusion, is that the world was brought into existence through a focalizing of an imagination. And all of our individual realities are the same. And then our collective our collective quote unquote reality is the same. And that's why it can be changed by acts of power, acts of the imagination. It's why things like literature can have such a massive effect. I rewatched the Harry Potter movies recently, and that was really a defining series of movies and books for a whole generation, and it really opened a lot of people up to other possibilities, if only hypothetically. It really, it really captured something about this question of magic. For my generation, it was really Tolkien that did that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get into a comparison of Rowling and Tolkien, but these are two totally different fruits here, but for vegetables, animals. Yeah. So I'm really big on anything, whether it's a healing modality or a work of art that can open up that ability to see more possibilities. Like I think of someone like Alex Gray's paintings. Perfect example of art that can do this type of thing.
Yeah. Regarding your new book, then, Sol, you say, get out of here alive. So what is here then? What we're trying to get out of?
Yep. That's one of the questions I do delve into a little bit. It's one of the first questions that I endeavor to answer, and my response to the question is that here is, like everywhere else, it's a construct. It's an imaginative construct, but it's a specific frequency and frequency range it moves very slow in comparison to the larger construct that it's part of. And when I say construct, really, I mean a dream. It's all a dream. We are in a dreamscape, in a dream construct. And there's no waking up from it, because everything is a dream. So even the narrative of awakening, and I wrote a book called A Story of Awakening, subtitled A Story of Awakening. But even the awakening idea is a bit of a red herring, because there's nothing to awaken to. There is only to become aware of the dreaming state and learn how to manipulate it.
I love that. And in essence, then it's an experience that we're having then, really. The dream is an experience, and it's full of trauma, though, for a lot of people, isn't it? And I don't want to dilute it by any stretch, because I've had my fair share also, but there's so much to enjoy if we can change our mindset. Is that how you feel?
Yes. There's the getting out of here. Like, I have I have a second book that I wrote as an ebook, a follow-up to Get Out of Here Alive. I mean, Get Out of Here Alive was just published on March 20th. And so I turned right around and wrote a 100-page ebook that's on my Substack. So you can go to saulluckman.substack.com. And in the musical vein that I've been working in, I titled this follow-up, it's a companion text. It's titled Out Through the Indoor. So that's a reversal of Led Zeppelin's last album title, Into the Outdoor.
Love it.
So in that book, I start out talking about the classical hero's journey versus the ultimate hero's journey. And the classical hero's journey, as Joseph Campbell laid it out, was a kind of circular journey where the hero went off, had experiences, was changed, got riches or rewards or powers, and then brought those back to the tribe, the community. And it was really a circular story about humanity. I said, there's another hero's journey, though, and it's not the Campbell version, and I'm calling it the ultimate hero's journey, and it's the one-way ticket out of here.
Oh.
Right. And that's not the same thing, even though you could call getting out of here alive a hero's journey. But I went to the next step and said, it's if you compare it to what is normally thought of as the hero's journey, the Campbell version of the hero's journey simply pales in comparison. The scope is nowhere near what we're talking about with powering up your energy body to such an extent that you can consciously die, step into your dream body, and sail off into eternity.
Wow. So that's individualization, immortality, in effect.
Yes, it is both individuation, where you fully become ensouled, because of that. We could talk about what a soul is and why they don't exist before you come here. So you individuate, and then you matriculate out of the matrix. It's funny because the matrix, the word matrix is derived. This has the same root as the word matriculation, and that root is womb. So you literally get birthed out of here when you matriculate out of the matrix, and that is growing up fully. That is the full Monty of becoming who you're meant to be, which is a child of God, a child of the dreaming God, dreaming all of this. And because that force, and I think of this as a fractal construct where you have dreaming gods inside dreaming gods inside dreaming gods, it's endless. But that force actually wants its children to do what I'm describing. That is what it wants most, and it gets the biggest bang out of its experiential buck when one of its children goes the full distance and becomes another dreaming god.
Wow. Wow, I'm just trying to get my head around all that. Yeah, okay. So you as a full creator, then leaving this, you'd be creating your own worlds then.
That's where all of that leads. You become another, you know, Vishnu-esque sleeping, dreaming god. Actually, you're kind of like, you're both the creator and the destroyer. I use the
Yes.
Ouroboros as a a symbol in my work a lot, and it's the serpent consuming. You can look at it as the serpent sort of creating itself. Its tail's coming out of its mouth, or it's consuming itself. And of course, the answer is that it's both. It's the alpha and the omega.
So okay, so we're truly immortal then, Sol, in that respect. If that's what we're capable of doing. I mean, if we're so explain to me what soul is then, because I'm people seem to have different concepts to this. The soul, spirit, and the mind, or the body, or whatever. So we don't have a soul coming into this reality then? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, just to clarify, we have the ability to become immortal.
Okay, okay,
We are not
okay.
starting out, and
Oh,
and we don't reincarnate in some kind of cyclical way. There's not really that a karmic thing going on. What we really have is a situation where there is no time. We are in a dream, and in a dream time, but there is no time. Everything is happening in the now. It's the power of now. And so part of what we're trying to do is find the power of now. And all of the different possible yous and timelines on all of your quote unquote soul group would all be happening kind of in the now, even if one of your group might be in the 16th century, or you might have somebody who's in the future, and you're all learning from each other. And it's these interactions that have been misconstrued as karma, which is basically an archontic lie having to do with debt and ownership. So karma is kind of the Eastern version of sin, and they're both lies, essentially, by the Archon, the demiurge, to
yeah.
to control the sheeple, essentially, to control the herd, and to keep them from doing the ultimate hero's journey. That's the whole point. Because if everyone's flying the coop, then its power source goes away.
Of course. And you
And
call it the dragon, don't you, in your
I
book?
do call it the dragon in Get Out of Here Alive and the sequel, because I'm using the motif of the hero's journey, and I felt that was a better metaphor or analogy for what this being is. Um, and it guards knowledge. The it really guards the entrance to yourself, because it controls your thoughts until you put a stop to that. So you can't go in to get out of here alive, because it stands in your way. So the first thing you have to do is learn to get the dragon out of your way. So you have to face and defeat the dragon, and there's specific ways of doing that. And then you can go in and go so far in that you come out. And so you literally go out through the indoor.
Whoa. So how did we get here then? In that, who's dreaming this? I know we're having a dream, aren't we? But I mean, in the Gnostic sense, Sophia, isn't it? And that's Gaia, according to John Lamlash, isn't it as well?
Mm-hmm.
Are we in Sophia's dream, but then individually we're having dreams also?
It's very possible that that is the originator of this particular experiment. Yes, it's possible. So I don't know for sure if that's the way things are, but I wrote a book. Well, I wrote a book in the pandemic window that goes into a lot of this. It's called Kali the Destroyer, and it's a Gnostic retelling of the fallen goddess scenario that John Lamlash lays out. So I'm very well versed in that way of thinking about things. Um,
Yeah.
at the same time, I don't feel that Sophia, what he calls Sophia or Gaia, would be any more or less real than anyone else. You know, it's just a larger version of ourselves, basically. And since everything is a dream, there is no ultimate reality there. So there's nothing special about being an aeon, and or even being the supposed originator, the creator in the Gnostic view. Really, all of those tend to get all of the aeons and the originator tend to get put on a pedestal, and this is where Gnostics act just like the Christians that they're claiming to, you know better than, right? They're basically they're just sort of repeating some of the same mistakes that kind of fundamentalist Christians are making, which is dividing things up as if there are different levels of truth, or there's some kind of hierarchy of being, of ontology. And I don't think it works that way. I think everything is fractalized. So there is no hierarchy, there is repetition, there's recursion.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense to me. Regarding the Archons and the dragon, if you like, the demiurge, just for people that are not familiar, I mean, I would imagine most that come across this will be, but could you just have a brief of what they are, what's their purpose? And a question for you is the dragon actually part of us anyway?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the way I lay it out, the dragon is a being from the greater dream that our construct is a part of. So I call that construct in the shamanic tradition the dark sea of awareness. It's the vast dream of eternity, essentially. And it is an apex predator that's a little bit like the mind flayer in Stranger Things.
Okay.
That saw this world with all of these shining lights on it, and that's us. We are the lights because we emit a certain kind of energy, and this is the power of our energy and imagination. And it came here to feed on us. And rather than just consume us, and then, like a in a one-time event, it created essentially a farm where the human herd could be held in captivity, in mental captivity, and sheared. The sheeple could be sheared on a regular basis so their energy could be harvested, but it wouldn't kill us, not all at once anyway. And our energy would be used to power up the construct in a certain way. And so this is why it's such a difficult place. It's because it's designed to be.
Okay.
It's designed to keep everything off balanced. It's designed to keep everything in a state of conflict, of divide and conquer. It's just the nature of this place as it currently exists.
And so one question I have regarding our thoughts then in that respect, we can have intrusive thoughts, can't we? We can have dark thoughts, we can have great thoughts, but are we in control of our thoughts a lot of the time, or are we being pushed things?
There's so much, there's so many interweaving threads here of discussions we might have. But here's the way the dragon works. The dragon doesn't use external control. The dragon controls us by controlling our thoughts, but it does this in a very specific way. It does this by the way it first interfaced with the human species is depicted in the biblical story of the Garden of Eden, where the serpent enters the garden. And I propose that garden was a time in our ancient history when we did not currently have the kind of brain that we have now, where we were living in much more of a collectivist tribal way, and we were operating we were processing the world through the lens of the unconscious. And we did not have a consciousness as we currently understand what that is. It didn't mean we were unconscious in a negative sense. It meant that it was as if we were very aware that we were dreaming. And we were very connected at that dreaming level. But we were not nearly as individualized or individuated. So when the dragon showed up, the apple that it presented was an operating system, its own mind that we could use to have a form of consciousness. When we accepted the apple so that we would know more about the world, that's the tree of knowledge, this operating system suppressed our unconscious mind so that we barely have any access to it. It's extremely difficult to get access to it. Jung wrote thousands of pages on how to get access to the unconscious mind, and it's still really, really difficult. So we're separated from this vast reservoir of knowledge and power, and we operate with a mind that we think is our own, but it's actually the dragon's mind. And so all of the crazy, intrusive thoughts that we have are the dragon's thoughts, not our own. Our thoughts happen when we experience inspiration, flashes of imagination. When we go into simplicity, we become childlike. And when we build up our power, this is how we begin accessing what you might think of as your own thoughts.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's your true self there, isn't it? Because that's coming from the heart and from the love that we truly are. That's what I believe anyway. That I try and come out of my mind as often as I can, because I'm always being tricked and put under stress by my thoughts. And having those simple moments of being in nature, for example, and just listening to the birds sing, or playing with my dogs or whatever, that's when I feel more alive. And that's when my intuition comes as well, because I'm more relaxed and I'm not thinking.
Yeah, no doubt. I have a whole chapter on ways to simplify your existence as a starting point. It's not like you jump into inner alchemy with both feet. Having never done it like this, I don't even recommend that. I recommend lifestyle changes and learning how to tap back into your deep knowing, your gnosis, your wisdom, and letting your energy pool naturally by removing your interface with the very things that are taking it away right now, like too much technology, too much social media. There's lots of different things that are pulling your energy. Too much doom scrolling, too much truthing, following truth. Investing in memes having to do with apocalypse or whatever. All of these things are just killing you one paper cut at a time.
Yeah, in your latest book, then you talk about procrastination then being a good thing in that respect.
Yes, it's a very fertile ground where you can just follow the workings of your mind with no agenda, and this is often where we have creative breakthroughs.
Yeah, I must admit, I gain more knowledge from the silence. That's when I find I'm at my best. I struggle to do nothing. That's something I do struggle with, and I know that comes from a lot of programming. I get a lot of shame and guilt if I'm not working, if that makes sense. I should be working. I should be, and I find that really difficult to. When I had my breakdown, that I had to try and push myself hard to have no shame or guilt in doing nothing and resting. It was really difficult. It's one of my biggest challenges, that, and it still is, I'll be honest.
Yeah, right. Well, obviously there's a lot of programming. Again, the dragon wants us to be busy and live meaningless lives full of busyness so that we find the door inward and we will not begin taking our energy back, and we'll never get out of here alive.
Yeah, and that the trick as well is the material world itself, I guess, that a lot of people in this world see success as gaining as much material stuff as possible and collecting whatever material, which means nothing at the end of it all, instead of doing the inner work, isn't it? That there's a complete, everything's inverted, it seems.
You know, this path of for me, this path of inner alchemy and pursuing the ultimate hero's journey really doesn't spend any time in judgment. Like, if people want material things, that's fine. And honestly, if you are going to go on this path, it's a good idea to have some resources, or to find ways to not work so hard, like Thoreau going off into the woods, or whatever you need to do to just simplify your existence and have more time to do the inner work. It's fine. So it's okay if you have some money or some resources and you have some comfort. Good for you. That's great. You are in a great position to do something meaningful.
Well, it definitely buys time, doesn't it? If you've got money, you don't have to do the 9 to 5 slog, then, do you, to pay your bills, and you have more opportunity, I suppose, to find time if you've got
Yeah, I mean,
money.
there's the one way where you have resources and it can pay for your lifestyle, and then the other way is simplifying and spending less money, and there's combinations. And so,
Yeah,
how we're all different. We all like different things. We like different climates, places, all of that. So, I certainly encourage people to follow their bliss, to use another Campbell reference, and do whatever makes you tick. It doesn't really matter. What matters is, at the end of the day, do you have time to listen to the inner voice that is yours? Can you follow that still small voice wherever it leads? It's very fascinating. It's not even that anything is wrong with thoughts. For example, the goal of inner alchemy is not to go into silence. Silence is just one modality. It is to actually realize that all of your thoughts are real. They have the potential to spin off realities, and to take full responsibility for that without getting paranoid. Because you have to energize a thought. You have to have the personal power to take a thought and then turn it into a thing, right? That takes
yeah,
personal power. So just someone randomly having a thought, this is not you know this is not a situation where you're going to just accidentally do a bunch of craziness, because you don't have the power. It's almost guaranteed that you're not at a place. If all of this is new to you, you don't have a lot of power. You don't have a lot of personal power. You don't. So maybe you have some ancestrally, constitutionally, that kind of thing. But
yeah.
what I'm talking about is something that you spend time cultivating, and it involves going and healing your traumas, and taking back all the power that you've lost through various episodes in your life, and various difficult moments, and then taking that power and storing it in a very specific way in your body, and packing it down, packing it down, packing it down in the solar plexus area if you're a man, or in the womb if you're a woman. And you do that long enough, and you pack in all of that energy that you reabsorb. You end up creating what has been called the philosopher's stone, which is not a physical stone. It is an energetic uh, construct inside the construct of your body, inside the greater construct of the world.
Okay. Okay. So in terms of in terms of that kind of work, is that recapitulation then?
Recapitulation is something that I have a whole chapter devoted to that. So shamanic recapitulation, where you're breathing in the traumas. And then there is a kind of next level technique that I teach in the chapter after that, which is about energy absorption and reabsorption. It's an inner alchemy technique, and it's even more powerful than recapitulation. And
Wow.
that is the technique where you're specifically instructed how to begin building the philosopher's stone.
So your book is very much a self-help guide as well, then, really.
Yeah, it's funny. It's both. It's both a kind of inspirational, motivational manual for how to preserve your energy and your sanity in a really crazy world, and strategies for doing that. And then the second half of the book, the flip side, is that there are these things you can do to then build on that foundation to create more energy, more power, more ability to manifest desired outcomes and to do the impossible.
Oh, it sounds amazing. And I've listened to the first 5 chapters, and I must get myself a copy for sure and get onto it, because I'm very intrigued with the dream body that you mentioned. So with the work that you have done, you've experienced this yourself, haven't you, where you have full control of your dream body?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I do have some background in just normal lucid dreaming, but what I'm actually talking about here is what shamans would call dreaming awake. And this is where you, as I mentioned earlier, where you can use specific awareness techniques, specific strategies for utilizing your attention and your imagination to follow your energy, your perception into a space where you can actually interact with that dream body very productively. And there's visualization techniques where you can actually end up kind of opening your eyes, and then you can have a sense of actually being in the same room with your dream body, like where you are. That's it, because one of the primary goals of this work is to materialize your dream body, put that in quotes if you like, to such an extent that it becomes practically as real as your own body on an energetic level. And it becomes what you will be, what you will inhabit when you leave your body. So you get to actually spend all of this time creating your ideal dream body, which I write about in Out Through the Indoor quite a bit. I have a specific technique for energizing your ideal dream body for healing purposes in the now, but beyond that, for being able to navigate in eternity across the dark sea of awareness.
It's so powerful, this, and I'm blown away by this. And can we, before we move away from loosh, too far away from loosh, because I think it's really important that because like I mentioned earlier on, you've brought this up recently about the truth of movement. Are we, as 2020 was an obvious kind of situation. I think it was a really important time, but the fear was something that was used, obviously, globally. And do you feel that collectively we are capable of creating what they in quotes, the demiurge, if you like, if it's the Archons, the demiurge, want us to create in our own realities?
Well, my understanding, and I write about this in not only these 2 books that we've been talking about today, but in the precursor to those books, which was called The World, Cult, and You, and that's a Substack exclusive. So if you go to saulluckman.substack.com, you can find The World, Cult, and You and read it. And there's also an audiobook of that.
Yeah.
I lay the groundwork for a lot of this. And so the idea is that the world, this construct, this matrix, is actually like a giant series of nested cults. And all of the cults are designed to track people's thinking, to track their imaginative potential into certain lanes, so that we create what the Archon, the dragon, desires us to create. Because it does not have the ability to create in the same way. If you recall, earlier on, I said it saw this planet with all of these lights on it, and that was us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the power of our imagination. We have this amazing gift that it does not have. It can manipulate minds, but it cannot create.
Okay.
We can. That's why we are special, and that's why we are food.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And therefore, you know, we're finding that if you go on that truther path, and I'm suspecting that maybe you did at some point in your life, you find yourself going down various rabbit holes, and you get addicted to these rabbit holes, and it's almost you want to be proven right, but this is your own individual reality, is it?
Yes, that's well stated. Basically, the way the construct works, because it is a kind of dream, is that it feeds back to you. I call it a feedback loosh. It feeds back to you whatever you're looking for. So if you start researching mud floods or Tartaria or the Phoenix phenomenon or something like that, it'll start feeding back evidence to support that. But if you then choose the exact opposite of that scenario and you start researching that, you'll start finding evidence for that as well.
So everything's a mirror. And it's a bit like AI. When you play with ChatGPT, it mirrors you in a way. It will create what you are wanting it to create.
That's a very good analogy.
Wow.
And that's a teaching moment too, because that's exactly what's going on. But that's how the construct works. That's how this thing functions that we're in.
And then what's fascinating as well, going back to 2020, and I talk about it a lot because it's so fresh in the mind, and it's I think it's such an important event, but it polarized people so much that people seem to be on different timelines. But really, should we just be stop playing the game? I mean, what happens if, you know, you'll have people watching right now that will say, well, there's this nasty thing, like say Palestine and Israel as an example, you know, there's horrific things happening there. Do we just avoid that? You know, people that are suffering?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And the short answer is that obviously there is suffering. There's tremendous suffering. I too have suffered. You know, I know that you've gone through your own suffering, but probably nowhere close to the extent of some people in Palestine, for example. If you look at the history of the world as it's written currently, I mean, it's one genocide after another. I mean, it's some tough sledding. So obviously, people are going to be called to respond in different ways. It's not really what you're doing; it's how it emotionally and spiritually impacts you.
Okay.
You can be in the world but not of the world. You can help people without entering into some kind of codependent relationship with those people. You don't have to be looshed by what you see, even if it's very tragic. You can maintain more emotional integrity and balance in the face of all of that and still do some good. Absolutely. But know that, and I go into this out through the indoor. I do an in-depth chapter on controlled folly, which is a shamanic concept for being in but not of the world. And it's where you have to go when you realize that it's all a construct. Either you go crazy or you turn away from it in fear and you pretend that you don't know what you know, or you realize that it's all a construct and you choose what you want to believe in and how you want to act, who you want to love. And you do those things like a fool. And you know you're doing it like a fool. And you're allowing yourself to be a fool. And that is wisdom.
It's becoming the observer, isn't it, as well, of you as a being?
Yeah, it is. It's part of it. I have a meme that kind of gets to that. It's be the watcher, watching yourself, watching. Again, it's recursive. It's completely fractal. It never ends. It's all totally recursive.
It's fascinating. You mentioned, and I'm glad you did as well, soul trap and reincarnation. And I've had numerous conversations over the past few months on my podcasts, you know, people, you know, wonderful people that have been on the show. But you've got a different take, haven't you? And I'm very interested on this, your perspective of this, because people are kept in a loop of fear. And I firmly believe in the magic in myself. And I don't believe I can be trapped. I believe I can be tricked, potentially. I get tricked often enough in this reality. But what's your take on this soul trap?
Well, for starters, I don't think we're souls before we come here, and nor did
Okay.
John Keats, and the great English poet who wrote about this place as a veil of soul making. So if it's a place where souls are made, they don't pre-exist this place. They come here to be forged in the crucible, the alchemical fires of this world. And you could say that the dragon plays a kind of tough love role in being a kind of sensei or teacher in this crazy classroom, because it makes it more intense, and it adds to the fire so that our souls can be forged of even sterner stuff.
Right.
So the idea is that we're here to create our souls. And one of the reasons people talk about NPCs, for example, a lot these days, is that there are many people who are here, but they're not all here. They've not become ensouled. They've not become individuated, to use a psychological term.
Yeah.
So if we come here to forge our souls, we cannot have a soul before we come here, and therefore the idea of a soul trap is a non sequitur.
Okay. And the reincarnation loop is non-existent then?
If you think of reincarnation not as being something that happens sequentially, not as something that involves debt and repayment, but as something that is like a simultaneous personality information network across time, or perceived time, then that's closer to how it works in my view.
So, because I always struggle to get my head around this. I'm not the brightest me, so I'll be honest with you. But I struggle to get my head around the time is an illusion concept where everything is happening at once. Is that correct? So if we're having various lives at this very moment in time, is that the way it works?
I do think that's how it works, and a lot of quantum scientists would say that's how it works as well. So if you think of space as frequency, so you locate yourself through frequency, that's a good way of looking at what space is. Time would be intensity. So time speeds up when more seems to be condensed into it, more experience, because the dreamer is experiencing different frequencies, different spaces, because its mind, the vast mind of the dreaming God, is spread out in all of these different frequency domains. And within that structure, there are all of these different time intensities going on, because people are having more or less experience. So like someone who's really on a spiritual path and is having download after download and experience after experience, there is tremendous intensity in that life.
Yeah.
But other people are perhaps not having a lot of intensity at all, and they're in essence living a kind of meaningless existence, but they've not even been ensouled. I mean, Jung himself said it's amazing how swiftly the universe can snuff out a meaningless existence.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
So he didn't hold back on criticizing people for wasting their time. And so when you get into the truthing movement, for me, and I respect that a lot of people are doing the best they can, but mostly it's just people are making up stories that they think are real, and they're wasting their time and everyone else's. That's how I see the truther movement.
Yeah, I understand that. Because there's trickery in there, isn't it? It's a psyop in itself in that respect, and you get caught in a loop of it all. Like I say, it's addictive. It can be very addictive, and it can be very toxic as well, because you end up quite paranoid, quite angry. So that's the loosh then, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's part of the larger truther movement, and I'm sorry to say it extends into medical and holistic fields, and it's part of the looshing apparatus. It just is. I'm not saying that individuals don't have good intentions, or that
Oh, no.
the heart isn't in the right place and that kind of thing, or that there aren't very intelligent people looking at different pieces of data. But you can have two different people looking at the same data about germs and reaching diametrically opposed opinions about whether they cause illness. And they can provide mountains of evidence to support their positions. This is what we just saw back in 2020 with people, germ theory versus terrain theory. It's just another loosh fest. It's a fake duality, because there's no duality there, because there can't be, because it's all being just made up anyway by perception.
Yeah, it's perception. Absolutely.
And perception is so powerful that if you believe enough in that germ, then you bet your ass it can hurt you. And if you don't, you bet your ass it can't.
Absolutely. And that's the way I saw it. It's the fear thing. People were so wrapped in the fear, you can guarantee you're going to be ill. You make yourself ill.
Yeah. And we could talk about that being some kind of psychosomatic thing, because germs don't really do that. Or in that person's reality, they do that. And that person can present evidence of a scientific nature, quote unquote, that supports how they do that. Studies on studies, double blinds, everything is there. And yet it can be easily contradicted by the other camp. I realized that we were basically, when I saw this happening, this was an aha moment for me. And my simple question was, is the scientific method broken, or did it never exist in the first place?
Good point. Yeah, it's a good point, because science is supposed to be debated, but science, you had to trust the science. Oh,
I would say trust the seance, because it's just another form of magic. It's spell casting.
Absolutely.
Everything is magic. Everything is spell casting. So it's all about narrative and creating the strongest narrative. So when you have terrain versus germ theorists going at it, you're not looking at it's not that there's one truth and another falsehood. It is basically a struggle over who can create the strongest narrative.
Yeah. No, it's certainly it's a fascinating time. I talk about it a lot. I can't get away from it because it had such an impact, but it's had an impact on me spiritually, because it's pushed me into my shadow. It's made me do the inner work, so it's been an amazing period for me, because I had to. It's just an event that forced me to do the work. So I have a lot of respect for it in that way, and that's a question that I'm going to ask now regarding the dragon itself and the darkness and the shadow. Can we use the darkness for ourselves in some way?
Yeah, you've asked some really good questions, and the short answer is absolutely yes. In both of these new books, I discuss how we can use shamanic and alchemical techniques for absorbing and reabsorbing energy, subtle energy, power, chi, prana, kundalini, whatever you want to call it, to actually take energy from the dragon that it has stolen from us and other people, and claim it as our own and utilize it.
Oh, I like that.
You can actually go to the pure intent of the dragon. You could go to any, like I have a line, something along the lines of, you could have fabricated 1,000 philosopher's stones just from the loosh that was available with 9/11, for example.
Oh yeah.
So you can go to the intent behind some mass ritual of looshing, and you can actually take the energy from the dragon. And you can do this in the past. You can go into past events and do this. You can go into a present event, and you could even go into a theoretical future event and do this.
Okay. Interesting. And this is all in your book then, isn't it?
Yes.
This is in your book. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mind blowing.
So you take that energy as you would other forms of energy, environmental energy, or energy from your own traumas that you lost. You take that into your body, and specifically it comes in through what I call the intake valve between your shoulders. It probably has to do with the assemblage point in shamanism.
Right.
There's a kind of a relation there. And then that goes into your stomach, which is obviously it's our primary digestive organ. From an energetic or subtle energy perspective, it digests the energy. And then while that energy is in your stomach, obviously it's going to have a lot of crap in it because you've taken it from the dragon, right? And there's a lot of negativity, and this is where people get hung up on doing this because they're like, no way, not doing that. But what you do is you use your intention, your power, your focus, your imagination to take that energy and turn it and to purify it. You make it absolutely pure. And you basically recode it to your own uses.
That's alchemy.
That's alchemy. And then you take that energy and you move it down into your cauldron, which is that solar plexus area or the womb area. And once it's down in there, there are specific techniques for packing it very tightly into this dense little thing that begins to become the Philosopher's Stone.
Wow.
When that is powerful enough, it's kind of like a bionuclear reactor that just gives off energy, just infinite amounts of energy practically.
And can you imagine if that was a collective, never mind just an individual doing it, if there were?
Yeah, this is what I've said in relation to things like the truther movement. I'm like, okay, obviously things aren't really getting better. I mean, if you just are honest with yourself, and if you look at history, is there any real reason to believe that things are likely to get better the way things have been going? And by doing the same things over and over again, Einstein said, insanity.
Exactly.
Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So all of this truthing, all of this fact checking and fact finding, and all of this basic, this mental masturbation leads nowhere. Can you imagine if all of that energy were utilized to take energy from the dragon and to put it to good use for yourself and the world? Just think about it. Think if 1,000 people in one little town were doing that, what their town would be like.
Wow. I mean, there's been talks of like huge prayer sessions, hasn't there, where it's made a change in the area that they live in. So
it's called the modality effect, and I write about that as well, and I use that as an example of a somewhat toned down example of what I think would be possible. But yeah, a lot of people meditating on kind of peace or whatever, just normal meditation, and you see like crazy reductions in number of car accidents and fatalities and murders and all, everything just calms down in the area. So if you were taking tons of energy from the dragon, really focusing on making your life better and increasing your ability to manifest a different world, or even just a different town, a different little community, it would be amazing.
Yeah. I'm with you on this. This is wonderful work. So, can I ask you about chakras? Because I do Reiki, and I've listened to a number of people that's attacked me over the past few years who said it's evil and blah blah blah. But they say that the Archons are able to take from the solar plexus chakra. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. One of the hallmarks of Regenetics is something called the fragmentary body, and it is a hole in your energy field that is in that general area. It's sort of more related to the second chakra, the sex chakra. But it also has a relationship, and I describe what that is in Get Out of Here Alive. It has a relationship to the third chakra in the solar plexus area. And essentially what that fragmentary body is how these etheric parasites, it's how the demiurge, the dragon, it's how it gets into you. and how it's
Oh,
where it takes your energy. It's just how it works. And so Regenetics starts with potentiation, which is designed to seal the fragmentary body.
oh, great. Yeah. Okay. Because there's some accounts that I've come across that say that they will remove people's chakras for them, and I don't know if that's possible or not. But this is this what you're talking about sounds wonderful in terms of taking control of your own situation, being more responsible for yourself.
Yeah, what it does is it plugs that energy leak in your system and allows you to begin pooling energy that immediately goes into healing and other areas.
It's just, yeah, wow. Gosh, and I love right. Okay, there's one. Before I know we've probably got about 15 minutes to go. So I love the way you talk about the individualization, moving away from here, because I would imagine most people are afraid of death. What do you see death as? I mean, you were facing it yourself, so weren't you, at one point in your life? So, what is death?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really good question. And as you might imagine, the full answer would be fairly long and complicated. But here's the way I see it working. You have a force at the center of this particular larger construct. So if you have like a dreaming god, something that is generating this rung of the fractal, right? So there's at the center, whether want to look at it as a metaphor or as a astrophysics type of reality, you have a central sun, right? You have the black sun at the center of it all, and that is the destroyer and also the creator, and that really is the dreaming god. The black sun is that dreaming god, really. That's what it is. And so whatever, however Sophia may or may not relate to that, I think of that more as the originator
Mhm.
of this particular fractal that we're in. When you die, you are being broken down and ultimately reabsorbed by the central sun.
Okay.
You were an experiment, a thought experiment, literally, that went off in hopes that you would create a soul for yourself and then
Yeah.
create a philosopher's stone and then become another dreaming god. That was the ultimately. So if you were to be the ideal seed, that's how you would sprout through this matriculation pathway, right? But
Yeah.
for most people, especially given the difficulty of the construct that we're in, they don't complete that. And so they are ultimately absorbed or reabsorbed by the central sun, and their energetic essence is utilized to create new people eventually. And so part of you lives on, but not as an individual. This is where your individuality is ultimately reabsorbed, and you are no longer an individual. You are part of a
Mhm.
much larger unconscious. You are part of the unconscious, the collective unconscious in this case. That is part and parcel of the central sun. It's part of the vast universal mind that we are birthed from. In the experience of moving back to the central sun, you're following the rift, the road through the Milky Way. You're walking. You're making your way back. You might have helpers. You might have difficulties. You might experience what you think of as heaven or hell, or you might think that you've reincarnated in a world. And all these are basically like holodeck experiences where you stay in that as long as you need to figure out that you're just creating it with your mind. And when you
Yeah.
can do that, like Natalie Portman exiting her prison cell in V for Vendetta, you can just get up and walk out and move and keep moving on towards the central sun. And eventually, what this allows you to do is heal your trauma and your and shed yourself of your dogma and indoctrination, and realize that you are basically just a child of light and you're returning to your source. And at that point in time, when you are reabsorbed, my understanding is that you it can be a very joyous experience, even though part of the afterlife experience might have been difficult for you. Now, there is a third path, and this is something that I wondered about for years, but the first person I ever saw write about it was John Kreiter in a book called The Way of the Death Defier, and he was a very big inspiration behind my own work in inner alchemy. He talks about the consolation prize, and the consolation prize is fascinating. So this is how I got onto the idea that there had to be something like a consolation prize. Let's say in my case, I do all of this inner alchemy. I'm working on my dream body. I'm working on my philosopher's stone. And let's say I die early. Let's say something happens. Shit goes wrong. And suddenly I haven't completed enough work on my dream body and my energetic stone to become eternal, to become immortal. But yet I have all this power because I've been doing this for a long time. What happens to me? Am I just like everybody else who's being reabsorbed by the central sun? And the answer is no. The answer is that you can utilize your experience as a dreamer, as a conscious dreamer, somebody who can dream awake, and you can utilize all of that energy to live what can seem like an eternity and having different adventures in the dark sea of awareness.
That's pretty cool consolation.
Before you then present yourself to the dark sun, the central sun, for reabsorption at the end of your energy.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
So even if you fail in your attempt to get out of here alive, you can still go out through the indoor and have amazing experiences.
I like that. That's really interesting. It's it's just something that I know that I have fear of for whatever reason. But what I'm trying to get my head around right now, Sol, is if everything's happening at once and all our lives are happening at once, do we truly ever die then? I mean, I know I've seen death, obviously, so that something goes on, but I find my mind can't kind of logically put it all into place, if that makes sense.
Right. It requires understanding or understanding this concept requires you to be aligned with the notion that there is just an eternal present, basically, and that everything is happening simultaneously. It doesn't mean it's not perceived through intervals of intensity that we call time. And obviously, yeah, that's how that works. That's what allows us to perceive it as a sequence of events. But it's not what it actually is, because what there actually is just a dreaming that's happening in an eternal present. And I'm not the only person saying this. You have everybody from, Eckhart Tolle and The Power of Now to, seers and mystics and holy people from all over the world for thousands of years saying exactly the same thing.
Yeah, we're creating stories, aren't we?
Yeah, we're writers, we're creators, we're artists, or we are, regardless of whether we know it or not. An atheist is just as much an artist as a Gnostic.
Yeah. Yeah.
The atheist would just be as aware of it.
Yeah, but this is the thing, we're all creating our own realities.
Ultimately, that's fundamentally how it works. Yes. So we're in a place, as hard as it is and as unfair as it can seem, in this construct where we are being challenged to figure this out, that's what we're doing, and then to get better at it, with the ultimate goal being to transmute into another level of existence.
Yeah. It's fantastic. By the way, anyone listening, I highly recommend you get onto Sol's Substack. I highly recommend that you not only give away a lot of material, but it's mind-blowing information as well. And obviously subscribe to Sol's YouTube channel. Sol, where can people get your book? Obviously, they can get it through your Substack. Is it available on usual places?
Yeah, it's on Amazon right now. I have an exclusive agreement with Amazon for the next little bit, so it'll be available as a Kindle ebook or a paperback through Amazon. I am serializing the audiobook on my Substack. So go over
Cool.
to saulluckman.substack.com, and I think I have the first 6 chapters posted. And the one I
And
just posted today was called The Trouble with Truthing.
and I listened to that earlier on, and it was wonderful. What are you up to nowadays then, Sol? Obviously, you're a very busy man. Is there a new booking plan? Have you got any other projects on the go?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I was planning on doing an audiobook version of Out Through the Indoor, so be on the lookout for that. I also have a novel called Beginner's Luke that I am looking to release. I don't know. I'm working on getting Get Out of Here Alive into more readers' hands, and I'm working with a group of basically marketing experts to make that a reality. And if it can go to a certain level, that would be very helpful to me. I might consider publishing Beginner's Luke as a as a more of a mainstream book with a mainstream publisher. I would entertain offers to do that. In fact, early on, the first well, to make a long story short, I was offered a contract by a New York publisher, and then I turned it down.
Okay.
Because this book goes back. This was the first really big thing I ever wrote, and it's always been my little brainchild. So it's what it is a novel about a person who is imagining his reality, and he's becoming more and more conscious of that as he keeps fucking shit up over and over.
Love it. As we do.
Yes. So it's really about me. It's about us. It's about what people do. And so,
Yeah.
and it's completely aligned with all of this nonfiction material that we've been talking about today.
Yeah, it is. It sounds wonderful, that. And regarding your Regenetics, so how do people contact you regarding that? Do you have a different kind of website for that?
Yeah, that's phoenixregenetics.org. And the books, there's 2 Regenetics books. There's Conscious Healing, which was the first Regenetics
Yeah.
book. And the second one is Potentiate Your DNA, and those are available at bookstores all over the place. You can also access those with a free trial or a paid membership to my Substack. And on that Substack, I have an exclusive video tutorial called How to Potentiate Your DNA. So you can watch that and learn how to do your own potentiation, or you can watch that in combination with reading the other materials. So there's just a ton of material there. You can also experience potentiation, which is the first DNA activation in Regenetics. You can experience that with something called a worldwide potentiation ceremony, which we do the first Sunday of every month.
Oh,
So that's free or by donation. So you can learn more about that at phoenixregenetics.org.
that's amazing. So thank you so much for all the work you're doing. Keep dreaming, brother, because it's you're dreaming a great dream. So, and I appreciate you very much, and thank you for joining me tonight.
Well, thank you, Ant. Thank you for having me, and I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm glad we could make it happen.
Me too. Me too. I hope we can do it again sometime. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Sal.
Right on. Let's do it.